All right, folks. Thanks for joining me. I'm super excited that Epic has fixed the issues we were having with skipping first player for the controller, so we can now do local multiplayer again super easily. That's what I'm going to do right now for you. So, if I plug in a controller, and right now I'm plugging in an Xbox controller because I'm having problems getting PlayStation controllers to work, which will be another thing to talk about. If I click and look around, or if I try and use my controller, it's all using the same player. That makes perfect sense when I have one player. But if I scroll out here a little bit, I grab that player start and I duplicate it. Now I've got two player starts, and I might be able to have two players playing on one local machine, which is really easily set up. I'm just quickly going to do this in a level blueprint. This is not the best way to put your code, your blueprints into Unreal, but it's the quickest, and that's what we're going to do right here. So I'm just going to right click and say event begin play. And off my event begin play, I'm going to drag off that pin and I'm going to say create local player. And I am going to leave this with controller ID -1. This basically just means it will increment and add another controller every time this happens. So it's actually great for adding multiple. Spawning player controller here makes sense. That's the default. Let's leave that on. The only time you would turn that off is if you have an instance where someone is joining a game and they're not spawning in, but they're waiting for the next turn. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and leave it as is, and we're going to be perfectly happy with the way that this is set up. I'm going to compile and save, move that out of the way. And now if I go ahead and play test this, what is going to happen is I'm going to have two characters spawned in, and when I move one of these characters, it will be mouse and keyboard, and when I grab my Xbox controller, it's going to move the same player. So a quick and easy way here to have one player controlled by mouse and keyboard and the other by the controller is to go into your project settings under Edit, Project Settings. And once you're in here, the easiest thing to do is look for Skip. And under Project Maps and Modes, you will find Local Multiplayer, Skip assigning gamepad to player 1. Once I enable that, now when I test, I have a player which is being controlled by the mouse and keyboard. And if I grab my Xbox controller and I start moving with the Xbox controller, that's going to move the other player. So I now have two players that can operate in the game as soon as the game starts. Fabulous. Now, if you want to take that one step further, I'm going to open up our level blueprint again, drag that in from my other window. And what if instead of just beginning on play, what if you wanted to have a one-player game, and then when someone comes to join, they can press a button on the controller and join you? Well, that can easily be done too. We're just going to use a slightly different way of calling this. And we're going to say events, and we're going to say gamepad special. And I like to use special right. This makes a lot of sense to me because on an Xbox controller, oh, debug. Why did it do debug? I don't want debug. Let's try that again. Event, gamepad, special. There we go. I mistakenly clicked up here. I don't want debug. I want down here. Gamepad special right. There we go. So on an Xbox controller, that button is the start button. And on a PlayStation controller, that is the option button. Now, again, I've been having issues of late getting Unreal to recognize my PlayStation controllers. That will be another video that I'll get into in the near future. But right now I'm using Xbox controllers exclusively. So I'm going to drag the pressed pin and drop it in here. And then I'm going to unpin, or I could delete the event begin play. And if I compile this, move this out of the way, and press play, I now have a single player game, which is mouse controlled. Player can move around. And when someone comes along and grabs the controller and hits the start button, it will spawn a second player. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but this second player is actually spawning at the same player start that player 1 spawned at. So it's randomized. If I redo this, right now player 1 is here. If I hit the start button, player 2 will spawn at the other player start because player start for the other player start is currently occupied. But if you walk off that player start and hit the start button, the second player might spawn at the same player start or might spawn at the other player start. Again, that's not something I'm going to get into here, but we'll try and talk about that in another video. Okay, so we've gone ahead and we have the ability to have a player start in. The problem might be that if we're playing and I move out of the way and then I hit the start button and then I move out of the way and I hit the start button again, and then I can't control that player that's just spawned in because I don't have another controller that's plugged in. And if I hit the start button again, I now have 4 players. So this creates a little bit of a problem if you're trying to only make a 2-player game. So the way that we're going to fix that is we're going to use a variable. And so we're going to say player 2, or let's see, player 2 as Boolean. And we're going to go ahead and drag this off and we're going to create a branch. And this is going to ask the condition get, what am I doing here? Get player 2. And if player 2 is false, we are going to spawn a new player. And if it is true, we're going to do nothing. So after we spawn this player, we're going to actually, let's pull this in and say set. We're actually going to set player 2 to on. So what does this mean? I press the gamepad. It asks, is there player 2? Well, if there isn't, it's false. And we create player 2. And then we say player 2 is now true. So that if I press it again, when I press it, the branch says, actually player 2 is currently true. So it does nothing. Go ahead and compile, save, press play. I'm running around, playing my game. Someone else comes to join, grabs the controller, hits start. They're now running around playing the game, and they accidentally hit the start button, and nothing happens because it is currently a 2-player game and no more players can be joining. Okay, all of that works. There is also the fact that you can have multiple start points if you'd like. You can also have as you saw earlier, you can spawn in multiple players. I currently only have one Xbox controller that is operating. My PlayStation controllers are not being recognized by Unreal at the moment. So I'm going to take a look in a later video at having more than 2 multiplayer experiences, and hopefully that'll be helpful for all of y'all as well. If you run into any problems, let me know in the comments. If you are someone who actually has your PlayStation controllers working, it would be great to understand the way that you've been getting them to work, which might be different from the way I'm going to get them to work. And I'm going to look at increasing the series of local multiplayer, adding a whole bunch of other functionality, hopefully for multiplayer games, head-to-head on the couch. All right. Thanks a lot for joining. Talk to you soon.